Hi guys! We are going to be continuing with our ecosystem unit today, and we are going to be specifically talking about food chains. So, what is a food chain? Some of you guys may have heard of food chains or may be thinking of a fast food restaurant or something like that. We're not talking about Chick-fil-A. We're talking about ecosystems. Think of a food chain as similar to a paper chain, how each piece connects to the next, okay? So, what is a food chain? Let's get started. So, like I said, what is a food chain? A food chain is a way of thinking how plants and animals in an ecosystem are connected. Remember when I said like a paper chain? Each piece has to go together in order for there to be a chain. Food chains trace the flow of energy through an ecosystem. Now, you may be wondering, what do you mean energy? Well, if you look at the picture below, you'll see how a leaf goes from a leaf to a caterpillar. Now, is that saying that the leaf turns into a caterpillar? No. If you think, when you're walking outside and you see leaves that have little holes in them, how do the little holes get there? Does someone come by with a hole puncher and punches holes in leaves? No. The caterpillar eats the leaf, right? So, the leaf gives its energy to the caterpillar. Then we go from the caterpillar to the chameleon. Now, like I said, does the caterpillar turn into a chameleon? No! What do you think the chameleon's going to do to the caterpillar? It's going to eat it. That's right. And as you know, chameleons have very long tongues. Then we go from the chameleon to the snake. Now, sadly, because we've already talked about what happens to the leaf and the caterpillar, you guys know what's going to happen to the chameleon. And then from the snake, you go to the mongoose. And some of you may not know what a mongoose is, but there's a picture right there. So, we are moving the flow of energy from one organism, from one living thing to the next. The leaf, or not the leaf consumes the caterpillar consumes the leaf, the chameleon consumes the caterpillar, the snake eats the chameleon, and the mongoose eats the snake. Now, you may be wondering, well, what eats the mongoose? Don't get ahead of me because we're going to talk about these guys, okay? They're at the top of our food chain. But the energy flows from one organism to the next like a food chain. So, if you look, they have a flow of energy. All energy comes from the sun. Now, you may be confused. Well, how do we get our energy? We eat food, we drink water, all that good things. All those good things. Well, all food chains or all food webs need to start with the sun. Now, does that mean plants are going to eat the sun? No. In almost every food chain on Earth, the energy comes from the sun. Now, what does that mean? Think for a second of what needs the sun to grow. Some of you might like a salad or corn or bananas. What are these called? Plants, right. Plants need energy from the sun. Right? That's how they make their food. Now, plants are going to eat the sun, but they're going to use the sun to make their own food, which will make them grow. So like I said, plants are called producers. Green plants are producers. Now, do all plants have to be green? No. Are bananas green? They are in the beginning, but then they turn yellow. Producers are plants. I like to tell you guys that producers and plants both start with a P. That's an easy way to remember what a producer is. They use sunlight to make their own food. Now, that is very important, okay? They use the energy from the sun to make their own food. Plants make their own food on the inside through a process called photosynthesis. So, the plants are not eating the sun. They're using the sun's energy to make their own food. That's very important. Again, I'm going to say, the plants use the energy from the sun to make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. So, hopefully you guys can remember that because that's very important. All right, let's look at Mr. Turtle down here. Now, Mr. Turtle here is called a consumer. Consumers do not make their own food. They depend on other organisms to live. Now, do turtles make their own food? Because I don't know about you, but I've never seen a turtle in the kitchen. What do turtles eat? Think for a second. Turtles eat lettuce and different vegetables and fruits, so they are a consumer. If you know what it means to consume something, that means to eat something, right? So turtles cannot make their own food. They rely on other organisms to live. Now, what does that mean, organisms? Organisms are living things. So is a plant a living thing? If you said yes, you're right. Because plants grow and they make their own food. Alright, so our first level of consumers are our primary consumers. So some animals are primary consumers. They eat plants or parts of plants to survive. Primary consumers that only eat plants are called herbivores. So we have our antelope and we have our cow. Now, most of you have probably seen a cow, and cows do not like meat. At least I hope they don't, because that would be awkward if a cow ate a hamburger. If you've ever seen a cow in a pasture, what are they eating? Think about it for a second. Grass, right. So they are a herbivore. They rely on plants to get their energy to keep going. So from the grass gives energy to the cow so the cow can grow. The cow's not getting the energy from the sun. Then we have our other consumers. Secondary consumers eat other animals. Okay, so you have your cat and your dog. They like to eat meat, believe it or not. My cat loves tuna. So they rely on meat to give them energy. So we talked about herbivores. Then we have our meat eaters, and those are carnivores. What do you think people are? Do people only eat meat, or do they only eat plants, or do they eat both? Think about it. Now, don't let this picture scare you. Think about my question I asked before. What do you think humans are? Do we eat meat, or do we eat plants? Now, I don't know about you, but I love a good chicken tender with a side of broccoli. So that means we eat both, and that's called an omnivore. So then we have our tertiary consumers. Don't let Mr. Jaws scare you, but these are our predators that eat other animals, and other animals are their prey. So if we go back to the beginning where you saw the mongoose and nothing ate the mongoose, right? That is a tertiary consumer. They are apex predators and they're at the top of the food chain. These animals, such as the shark, are not hunted by other animals. Now you may be thinking, well, one time I saw a dolphin try to fight off a shark. That's different. The dolphin is not trying to eat the shark, it's trying to protect itself. So, tertiary consumers are your apex predators, and they're at the top of the food chain. Where are they? Are they at the top or the bottom? Good. They're at the top of the food chain. So now I have some questions for you. And you're going to do this independently once we're done. So, a frog eats insects. Is the frog a producer or a consumer? Think about it. Frogs eat insects. Now remember, producers are plants and consumers eat other living things. So, what do you think, producer or consumer? Lily pads make their own food. Are they producers or consumers? Now you may be wondering, I've never seen a lily pad. You probably have, you just don't know that it's called a lily pad. Lily pads are the little green little pads that float on ponds that frogs like to sit on. So, do lily pads eat other living things, or are they plants? Think about it. Then, we have, which would you expect to find more of in an ecosystem? Producers or consumers? Think about when you look out into your yard. Do you see more squirrels, dogs, cats out there? Or do you see more trees, grass, plants? That could be confusing, so I want you to go outside and look and see which one you see more of. You are part of the food chain, believe it or not. Can you think of how you are part of the food chain? Now you may be wondering, what do you mean? Well, think about it. When you sit down and eat your dinner, what are you eating? Are you eating broccoli, chicken nuggets? So, are we hunted? That's the question I'm asking. How do you think we fall in the food chain? Now, I'm more of looking for a brainstorm of an answer, so if you don't know, just try your best. I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are. So, once you're done, I want you to tell me what you have learned. So, what have you learned about food chains? You may have learned, well, I learned that an apex predator is at the top of a food chain. Now, I'm not going to share any more because I want you to tell me what you learned. But as always, make sure you go back at the beginning of the PowerPoint to figure out what you learned. Always use your resources. Always. Now, that is our last slide. So for tomorrow, I want you guys to gather plain paper, coloring supplies, glue stick, and scissors. And come back tomorrow because we are going to build our own food chain. I can't wait to continue, you guys. Keep up the good work. See ya.